Explore the history, relationships, expertise, and data that go into ensuring Stine growers get maximum yield potential. This is the Stine Seedcast. Here's your host, David Thompson.
Hello, and welcome to the Stine Seedcast. I'm David Thompson, National Marketing and Sales Director for Stine Seed Company. Today, our guest on the Seedcast joins us remotely from Canada. He's Dan Foster, Seed Lead for Ontario-based Sollio Agriculture. Thanks for joining us today, Dan.
Yeah, great to be here. I'm excited.
So Stine is really proud to be partnering with Sollio Agriculture as we expand our presence into Canada. Sollio is one of Canada's largest agriculture networks and works to deliver high-yielding products, inputs, and expertise across the country. So today, Dan's joined us to discuss their partnership with Stine, talk about row crop production up in Canada, and how our products will ultimately benefit Canadian farmers. So let's get started. Well, so Dan, super excited to have you on the Seedcast today. As I always like to do at the outset of every episode, would love for you to give us a little bit of a background about yourself and your history in ag, and just tell us about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I live in Chatham, Ontario, which is an hour east of Detroit, we'll say, sandwiched between Lake Erie and Lake St. Clair. Married with 3 kids, and I'm lucky enough to get to farm with my father-in-law here. We grow seed corn, soybeans, wheat, and some processing sweet corn when the rotation allows. I've been in the seed industry in one shape, way, or form for 25 years now. A little longer if you count my childhood. My dad's been a seed dealer since I was 6 years old, so I've known rejection, and I've also known the excitement of selling seed, and I've always had a passion for it. So I've been with Sollio Agriculture and the Agrimart Group now for 5 years in this role. Previous to that, I was working for another seed company, and I was everything from territory manager to agronomist to national marketing manager. So pretty excited to be in the seed business as it's one of my biggest passions.
Awesome. At Stine, we're super excited to be partnering with Sollio Agriculture to expand our presence up into the Canadian market. So just a little bit of background, maybe tell us a bit about Sollio and the Agrimart Group and kind of the arrangement you have.
Yeah, so the arrangement with the Agrimart Group and Sollio is it's a true 50-50 joint venture. So there's 22 Agrimarts, of which 6 currently are working with the Stine brand as we introduce it into the Ontario market. And those 22 Agrimarts are in Ontario and the Maritimes, so the East Coast, Atlantic Coast. What's unique about us is those owners of the 50% of the Agrimart are all strong business entrepreneurs, and they work at those locations. So they're there from sunrise to sunset in the spring, and they have a true vested interest, which is really unique as it allows for a long-term employment, and they have a vested interest in that Agrimart and day to day. So they are super passionate about working with their growers and very invested in their businesses and making them grow and keep up with the marketplace. Sollio Agriculture is much more Canadian-wide. They're started in the Quebec marketplace, and what they help is to do the procurement side for the Agrimarts and the services side. So it's a really unique 50-50 joint venture that allows for some real entrepreneurial spirit in those business owners as they have a vested interest in that business to make it grow and succeed. So it's a lot of fun to work with them.
Yeah, so and I guess I want to say I had the great opportunity to travel up there this spring and see some of your locations and travel some of the back roads there in Canada, and you know, you've got a great opportunity with great land up there, and exciting opportunity for Stine to kind of hopefully be able to get up there and partner with your team to help introduce that brand to a lot of growers in the Canadian market. Give us a little bit of an idea, particularly in your Ontario market. There's a fair amount of soybean acres, certainly, you know, in and around that lakes area. Is there not?
So the soybean market in Canada, it's just a shade under 5 million acres, of which 3 million acres of those soybeans are in Ontario. And the unique part is that Ontario is a really big province, but we only utilize the peninsula and along the lake shore, really. Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, and up along Lake Huron is where the majority of that crop is growing. So it's a very small footprint. And so we'll say it's just under 8 hours from east to west of the growing area and about 4 hours north to south. And in that, we range from a 3.2 maturity group down to a 00, 8 or 9 in that time frame going north. So it's really unique versus Michigan, for example, which we're right across that lake. But the lakes really have an effect on us. Our average yield last year in soybeans was 53 bushel across the range. We're all dry land, so no irrigation really in row crops. The lakes really help keep us in moisture. I'll say the other thing that's unique is we export 2/3 of the soybeans we produce here. And of that export, there is a big pocket that's different than the U.S., where it's IP soybeans, identity preserved, and they're yellow hilum for the food market. And so there's maybe about 1/3 of the soybeans grown in Ontario that go for that market. So that's a little different than the U.S. Another thing that's unique to us, maybe over the U.S., is that we are still heavily dicamba on soybeans, and we're able to continue using Extend soybeans and spraying Extend for the foreseeable future. Nothing's changed versus for you guys. But the enlist market is really starting to grow here. So that's pretty exciting to be on the Stine portfolio and working with Stine moving forward as E3s really get introduced into our market and being on that leading edge of the E3 marketplace.
Well, that kind of segues nicely into my next question I was going to ask, which is talking about, give us a little bit of a rough overview of how this came about, this partnership you guys have developed with Stine Seed Company.
Yeah, I guess initially it traces back to the first contact was, I believe, in 2013. Scott Wagner approached one of the Agrimarts up here, and they discussed moving the Stine brand into Canada. And then, for whatever reason, a few things fell to the wayside. And then I guess it'd be the fall of 22 that relationship was reintroduced to that one location. And then we had that meeting with Scott and the Stine team, and we started to expand it, and we found a good fit with 5 other Agrimarts currently to really get our feet wet into the Stine brand and selling E3s in Canada. We knew that Corteva Pioneer was going to be moving to 100% E3 moving forward, and we wanted to make sure we were set up to be able to compete in that marketplace for the E3 side of the business against Pioneer.
And like you said, your market is somewhat unique in the sense that the type of maturity spread that you work with for the geographic area that you have, or the latitude you work in, it's very unique to have such a wide spread of maturities, I think, at least relative to what we're used to here in the U.S. So currently today, you have a selection of products you're going to be offering through your Agrimart participating locations, right? Like, about how many products are you offering?
So for the 2025 growing season, we are going to be offering 10 Stine varieties ranging from an 01 maturity up to a 2.8. Of that, 3 of them will be new launches for this year.
And of those, is there any 1 or 2 that you're particularly excited to see for the 2025 season?
Well, so this spring, as you guys in south of the border, Noah, has had some challenging water times and a drawn out planting season for many of our growers in southwestern Ontario. But this week, actually, we did some quick plot tours and looked at the lineup. And what really stands out, I'll say right now, is the 20 EG02s and the 25 EG20s in the later end. And then the really midsection for us will be that 10 EG20 range, that 1.0. And it's a really super strong looking bean. It had some great color to it in the plots. And then on the early end, the 05s really showed some strong vigor and really what's unique to the Stine brand versus the other competitors we were looking at is how quickly they were filling the row and aggressively moving forward. So it was really good to see, especially in some of those tougher areas. The comments coming from growers is, "Hey, I can pick those beans out in the field in the side by side. I know where the Stine beans are." So that's exciting to hear from the growers.
What kind of things are Canadian growers looking for, from a soybean brand in terms of the product and the performance? Obviously, yield is paramount, but what are the things that drives the decisions of a Canadian, grower?
Well, and that's a broad question. Lots of different growers have lots of different ideas. What I will say is what's exciting about what we're working with, or what the growers are looking for initially, are as we're moving into different trait platforms and we're having higher input costs and different commodity prices hitting us, they're looking for expertise from their seed supplier. They're looking for, how do I best grow this soybean to excel on my farm? So yeah, yield's the most important. White mold is a big issue for us in the eastern part of Ontario, and weed control is really becoming, with resistance, something that we're dealing with. Obviously, we get it later than you guys as those weeds transition to the north and east. So those herbicide resistant weeds, and we have growers learning their new herbicide programs. It's nice to have another tool in the toolbox to be able to use. So having that glufosinate tied in with the Liberty, or with the Enlist and the Roundup side or glyphosate side is pretty exciting. As I said, yields first. Soybean cyst nematodes becoming a quick problem for us in those earlier maturities where soybeans haven't been historically in as tight of a rotation. So just soybeans are becoming a much better managed crop than they once were up here.
Good. So, as you're preparing, if you're getting into the 2025 season, obviously you've had some sales to growers in the 2024 season, whether they be commercial sales or just, some of your seed growers, growing seed for seed stock. I guess any initial impressions from, your initial class of customers that you had last year?
Yeah, so the ones that have it in the ground this spring, so like you said, we introduced a pretty small amount of seed into the market for the 2024 growing season. As bad as it sounds, we had to turn some growers down. And as we tried to spread them across the marketplace. Moving forward, I think we're laid out to more than triple our sales for 2025. But those growers that are growing them this year, it was interesting with Stine not being a brand name in Canada until this year, how many growers knew about Stine seed and wanted to grow or try those Stine beans. So that's kudos to the Stine team for the work you guys have done, and again, like I said, it surprised us how many growers knew the Stine name and a bit of the Stine story, and we're excited to see it come to the Canadian market.
So, Dan, one thing we talk a lot about is the fact that, even the best genetics can't reach their full potential if they aren't, placed properly. So how do you envision the relationship with Stine and with your team through the Sollio and through Agrimart to help, really get these products in the hands of growers and get them placed in a way that growers can really maximize the potential of those products?
So this first few seasons, the locations that are involved, the 6 locations, they each have a Stine champion. So that's the key contact for those locations. And we did our best to get as many plots out there as we could this year, and side by sides. I think we ended up with just shy of 200 growers growing Stine for the first time. And so those Stine champions, our goal with them is to be in the field as much as possible between, from planting to harvest, and learning about those varieties. We've also had great contact with Tyler and Scott from Stine, helping us through that, and really learning where to place those varieties, where the strengths are, where not to place them as we go. And that's something that my Agrimart partners have really been asking for, is more information on how to place the varieties. We know varieties are all tremendous varieties, or they wouldn't be in the marketplace. But then how do I place them to make them shine that much better on my farm, on my grower's farm? And that's something we're really excited to get from your team and the Stine Group, and then we ourselves learning as we go.
Good. I guess wanted to ask you a little bit about is obviously the relationship that we formed here, hopefully is aimed at helping you meet the need of your customers, and our industry is always changing and evolving. And so I'm curious what you see, particularly in your neck of the woods, for the Canadian market. What do you see evolving, and how do you see that, benefiting your organization, and how can Stine help you?
So the soybean market, so for us, that sustainability is a big thing. Environment's a big thing up here that's being pushed at us, or that we're dealing with, like every grower. The relationship our group learned as we met the Stine team was, like I said earlier, the Agrimart partners. They're the owners. They're the boots on the ground. A lot of them are farmers also. That first introduction we had to the Stine team, we got to meet the whole Stine team. We got to meet Myra and Warren and yourself and Harry and the team that runs the farm side. And having that relationship and being able to experience that was really what clinched the want to work with Stine that much more for this group. It was really exciting to see how quickly they got excited meeting your team, and just hearing how, they as business people are meeting, your team that's so passionate about the Stine business and making sure that farmers are getting the needs met. And that's our goal too. We want our customers to thrive and do well. And when we have a seed partner that's got the same mindset, it's really exciting to move forward. We're going to face a lot of challenges moving forward, from geopolitical stuff to markets to weather. And if we can place products and take some of that worry or strain out of that growing season, that's where I see there's a big advantage. And the openness with your team that, hey, if we run into a problem, we can make a phone call, and in a big hurry, we've got some answers. And that's all we ask, and that's what's most exciting from our team.
Well, you bring up a good point. I think when we met with a lot of your team members, one of the things we were struck by is that we see a little bit of similar DNA there, that that sort of entrepreneurial drive and spirit. As you said, you have some industry partners there who are actively involved in the day-to-day operation of their business, which is, a lot the way we run the Stine operation as well. So I think there's a lot of synergy that benefits both in that respect. So I guess my question, Dan, to you next would be, as you think about, where we're just starting on this path of this relationship, and I'd say both for you as a farmer there in Canada, and in your role as the lead architect for our relationship there with Sollio, what are your long-term goals out of this partnership between your group and the Stine Group?
We want to be able to continue to grow the business. Obviously, that's a given. What we want to keep doing is having that relationship with our end supplier. change is inevitable, but the change in ownership in the marketplace of other seed brands and partners has changed many times over the years. Our biggest thing is we want consistency so that we can bring consistency to our growers. Our long-term goals is to continue to build this, continue to grow our market share. We don't obviously want to cannibalize the current market share we have. We want to grow our market share and continue to bring the right answers. It doesn't necessarily have to be the right products, but the right answers agronomically for our growers. You guys are doing some very unique things with high populations in corn, something we haven't really done a lot of up here in Canada, mostly because just we're not dealing with the same topsoil amounts that you guys are. We're dealing with a lot less, so that high population hasn't been something we've worked with on corn. Now, granted, we're not selling that yet, but even just with beans, we've had a big shift from narrow rows at that 7.5 inch. The guys swung out to 30-inch soybeans, and now that they're dabbling in twin row. We're going back to 20s. The further north, the early maturities, they're going to stay with those narrow rows just because in that early maturity, they need to. It's proven to do the best. But as we get more disease issues, as we get more herbicide issues, knowing that we're getting the next highest yielding product coming out of your lineup, that's important to us. And being able to bring that to our growers and help them succeed. It goes back to growers. And one of the things in our meetings this week that Scott mentioned was that you're by farmers for farmers, making the decisions with the grower in mind. And that's really key for us as the AgriMart partners. That's really important to them as well, right? Because each one of those 22 joint ventures is still an independent business from the AgriMart beside them. And so they need to do the best they can and the best for their growers.
Dan, what would you like for our listeners to understand about the soybean business in Canada?
So in Eastern Canada, so that's another thing that's unique. East and West are very different. So Western Canada is developing a lot of biofuel crush, but it's more for the canola market. Eastern Canada, our soybeans get exported out to St. Lawrence. We don't go west, we go east. So that's unique where Eastern Canada is isolated from Western Canada. So I don't foresee us building more crush capacity. So, one of the things we're going to be dealing with is exporting soybeans across the globe. And that's unique. We don't have the Mississippi, we got the St. Lawrence.
As long as you got a way out. Well, so as we're closing up our conversation today, Dan, I guess if anybody's interested to learn more about, the Sollio Group or the AgriMart locations that you serve and work with, where can they go for more information?
So I'd say your best bet is to go to agrimartgroup.com. That website will bring you to the AgriMart Group's locations across Ontario and the Maritimes, all 22 joint ventures. And within that, they have 42 locations. The 6 right now that are selling the Stine seed in Canada are Southwest AgriMart in Chatham here, Scotland AgriMart in Scotland, Brant County, Lakeside Grain and Feed out of that Sarnia-Lambton area, Sprucedale AgriMart up in the Grey Bruce counties to the north, Alliance AgriTurf in central Ontario, and then Harvex Summit Seed in eastern Ontario. And they'll all have their own websites that you can catch through the AgriMart Group. So it's we've got the Stine brand being covered all across Ontario, and that's a great spot to go learn more about us.
Well, Dan, it's been a pleasure visiting with you. I appreciate you joining us on the podcast today, talking about your expertise, sharing a little bit of information about the Canadian market and the work that you're doing to help us expand and bring the Stine brand to soybean growers in Ontario. Appreciate the time you spent with us today. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, David and Stine team for working with us as well, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast.
Well, that's our time for today. I want to thank our guest and our listeners for joining us on another episode of the Stine Seedcast. We'll be back again soon with more expert interviews and insights about all things Stine. If you have a question for our Stine experts, send it to asktheseedcast@stineseed.com. That's asktheseedcast@stineseed.com. And to never miss an episode, subscribe to the Stine Seedcast wherever podcasts are found.
Subscribe to the Stine Seedcast wherever podcasts are found. To learn more about Stine and its elite corn and soybean genetics, visit stineseed.com. Stine has yield.